All right. And now, before we jump into anything, I wanted to start with setting where our center on equity, and actually grounded in justice, equity, diversity, and inclusion. The South Broward Community Health Hub partners and collaborators want to, number one, encourage the use of preferred pronouns to make it clear how we would like to be addressed, and to signal that we respect the gender identity and choice of pronouns of all of our stakeholders, partners, and community members. Two, we also acknowledge that the collaborative engages with the tradition in the traditional homelands and territories of the Seminole, Taino, and Tequesta. As a collective, we recognize the historical and continuing impacts of colonization on Indigenous communities, their resilience in the face of colonial and state-sponsored violence, and fully support Indigenous sovereignty. We will continue to work to be more accountable to the needs of American Indian and Indigenous peoples. We also want to commit to making all of our meetings accessible to folks whose primary language is not English, and invite everyone to participate in the language that is most comfortable to them and or that they would like to practice. We ask that everyone shares slowly and corroborating understanding. And if there's anything that is not being understood, please let us know so we can try to reach understanding. In the future, if we need, as we get more community members through these meetings, we are also open to collaborating with partners who are able to provide interpretation and different needs. I'm also going to turn on the, oh, I can't. Oh yeah, I can. I'm also gonna turn on the live transcript. If anybody wants to use subtitles for this meeting, you can turn them on and off on the bottom with this. There's a CC button on the bottom that's closed captioning. And then finally, like I said, we want to continue to participate and partner with stakeholders to build our capacity so that we can continue to be grounded in justice, equity, diversity, and inclusion. And that, since we have Miss Erica Hull here, she coined the term JEDI, from justice, equity, diversity, and inclusion. There is no EDI without the justice at the front. And so I really love that Miss Erica Hull kind of brought to my forefront, and I really like to use it because it's true. There is no EDI without justice at the front. All right, so now moving on, our meeting objectives. It's very similar to our last meeting. I'm gonna really try to rush as much as I can because we started a little bit late, but the main goal of today is that we're going to be working together through the map to assess our knowledge and our context and come up with some ideas and solutions of how we can work together. We are in the land, retail, and urban agriculture focused deep dive because we have partners here that are very engaged in those areas, and that is a special sector of the food system where we can make some connections. As you know, the South Broward Community Health Hub is funded through funds from the Community Foundation of Broward. We are the coordinating agency. Our work around food access, security, and justice is three main programs. We have other smaller programs in Miami, but they're just starting, so we haven't added them here. If you want to know more about any of this, you can always contact me. But the goal of our overall food access, security, and justice efforts is to really focus on building a local community-based food system that is dedicated to enhancing the environmental, economic, and social and nutritional health of a particular place. How we are going to do it is with our desired outcomes, which is focusing on building healthy food access towards food justice and security, creating ways to access health services and resources and opportunities, coordinate the community and the resource connections within those communities, and develop some strategies around economic development and collaborations. We have a working mission and vision that has been updated since our last meeting. So I'm not gonna read it right now because we're gonna look at it in more detail later. But overall, our vision is to coordinate, leverage, and connect all of the work that we are doing, all of the efforts that we're all doing together and on our own and with other collaborations so that we can continue to grow together and build more sustainability. Through this effort of South Broward, we're doing this work through the collaboration of some partners. Feed, who is Anthony Oliveri, he does a lot of our GIS mapping, the Dania Beach patch. I'm gonna give a minute for Natalia or Jamie to share a little bit more about the patch because they will be facilitating the later portion of today.
Hi, I'm Jamie again, and thank you for inviting me. And I work with the patch. Patch is people's access to community horticulture. and it's developed through a community-driven effort with the Dana Beach Community Redevelopment Agency. And sorry for the background noise. We're working outside today. So the patch is designed to be an economically sustainable urban farm system within the city of Dana Beach. It's a multifaceted program to improve health outcomes and economic opportunities. We operate a farm, a market, community garden, and programs that promote healthy lifestyles, from soil building to yoga classes. We kind of do it all here. It's one of the largest operating market gardens in the United States, and we've received national attention. And we participate in the Fresh Access Bucks program that allows EBT and SNAP card holders to receive 50% off fresh local produce purchases. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Natalia to finish up.
Hi, everybody. I apologize once again for some of the outside distractions, but as my cohort Jamie said, we are the largest and oldest market garden in Broward County. And one of the reasons that we were able to work together is that the Dana Beach Patch was awarded USDA FMLSPP grant in 2017. And what that is a farmers market local food promotions program grant. And we've been implementing the objectives of the grant to allow for Broward County residents to have improved access to locally grown healthy foods while expanding markets for farmers and growers in Broward County. Can move on to the next slide.
Thank you so much, Natalia and Jamie, for sharing. And as you are some of the key experts that are helping us guide this effort, but as you see, we have a lot of different partners, and this slide keeps growing. We keep adding on more partners and more collaborations, and we really want to see this slide not have room at some point that we have to do 2 slides. So please keep bringing more partners. And I think Tiara posted the partner database form. If you haven't filled it out, I know Z and Xavier have filled it out, but if you haven't, and also the patch, but if you haven't, please feel free to click on that link, open it up and start doing it. You can do it on the side right now, or you can save it for later. But that's a way that we can take your information and start putting it into this slide, and then also start creating more connections and more opportunities for us to work together. Before we continue to move on, and really quickly, just reminder that as we are building a South Broward Community Health Hub that is going to be a physical, virtual, and network space, we are just now developing our community action plan that is going to be guiding the development, implementation, and sustainability of our efforts. And how we're informing this is through our meetings like this one, and also through the integration of partner-led community-based short-term solutions. A few of you are actually part of our mini grantees. And the mini grants are really intended to start to pilot some ideas that are coming up as part of our co-design and our discovery, so that we can start thinking of the long-term solutions that are going to help us sustain this effort together, and then building those into our plan, so that we have direct action of how we're going to continue this into the next year. How we are getting to these goals, we do it through several methodologies and frameworks and approaches. Primarily community-driven leadership that we implement through our community liaison framework, collective impact and policy systems and environmental change approaches, place-based data and assessment, and 8 steps to building a successful community action plan. They're all very integrated. So first, with the community-driven leadership, we implemented through the community liaison framework, where we hire local residents from the communities that we are working with, so that then we can help develop their capacity and build support for them, whether it is through trainings, through individual coaching, connecting to different stakeholders, and then helping build those strong connections with stakeholders that are going to be driving towards action and true integration of community members for the decision-making and the guidance of everything that we do in our work, so that it can be guided towards sustainability through policy systems and environmental change efforts. Like as mentioned, policy systems and environmental change efforts are the way that we drive some of our work, because there is a lot of evidence that shows that this approach really leads to more sustainability, or more effective sustainability. Similarly, collective impact has shown a lot of great progress in the last few years, when we get different partners coming up with a common agenda, coming up ways of sharing measures, finding mutually reinforcing activities, establishing really good ways of communicating, and continuing to and relying on a backbone organization. Those are ways for successful efforts, not just here in Florida, but throughout the United States and the world. We also use data-driven efforts because these are a way for us to visually see the data. Sometimes just looking at spreadsheets and looking at the numbers can get a little bit tedious, and it's not for all of us. So the data-driven efforts, and this is guided with support from FEED, we really are able to identify the different assets and the different infrastructure opportunities, gaps, and potential places for synergy and connection. I apologize, there's a train going. But it helps us identify the assets in the community and really be more effective in connecting them in ways that make sense. And that's also why we like to have community involved in all of this, because who knows a place better than the people who live in it. So by using this tool and making it more accessible, and helping our partners and other community members work with us through this effort, it really helps us build some grounded activities throughout this network. Main thing that connects all of it is the 8 steps to build a successful community action plan, where we will be going through a process of developing a common goal, discovering our knowledge and sharing it with each other and understanding it, assessing how this knowledge and the assets and the networks that we're all connected work together. And then in our next co-design meeting, we'll start moving into the other set, the identifying motivators, identifying the intercepts, like what is moving each of us as individual organizations or individual community members, what is guiding us as a collective, and then what are the things that are happening, or the knowledge that is existent from the municipalities, from the infrastructure, from the different things that we can then intercept and really use those as our lower hanging fruit to then propose and implement change. And then later on, we'll continue to monitor and reassess to be able to adapt and adjust as we need. Today, we're going to be focusing on steps 1 through 3 through the geographic asset mapping activity. Again, we're going to be focusing on the goal, the knowledge, and our networks and context. First, let's look at the goal. The areas that are bolded are areas that have been updated since our last meeting. So in the last meeting, we shared the previous version of our goal, and a lot of people provided feedback on the chat. So I please invite you to provide feedback on the chat if there is anything that you see here that could still be further updated or more nuanced, made more specific or more reflective. So please, I'm gonna leave it on for a couple seconds. And if you could just share some of your thoughts on the chat, that would be great. All right, and this is the step 2. We're going to be sharing and documenting our knowledge through the geographic asset map. These are all the layers that are already inputted into the map. So as you'll see from the co-design meeting 1, we've been able to connect to a lot of different partners, and different partners have been sending us information that they thought would be useful for this activity. So now we have a much larger set of data that we can that we're going to be exploring shortly with Jamie and Natalia. Please feel free, if you also see anything that's not here that you think should be included on the map, please type it up as well on the chat. And finally, we are going to be assessing our network. So we're going to be talking about the community, the cultural and historical context, and the perceptions and the social dynamics of our spaces and how we can connect them. This activity and this exercise has been designed through UHB and with help from FEED. So Anthony is not here he's not joining us today, but he is definitely the mastermind behind a lot of this mapping. And sorry, I'm going to pass it on to Natalia and Jamie.
Okay. Great. Thank you, Aurelie. And we're going to start with what is a community asset. Natalia and I know that most of you have seen this map. As part of this Dania Beach CRA, we would be considered a public sector agency, and that would be a city government department engaged in aspects of health, the general welfare and the economic and social well-being of the city. I know that most of you know the community assets or resources, anything that improves the quality of community life. Assets are essential for the capacities and abilities of community members. Does anybody want to offer what community asset they represent? So that we can maybe go into what the graphic shows. No?
I was gonna say that nonprofits, maybe, right? Health and hunger nonprofits. We are a lot of us.
Good. That's true. Okay. Very good. Okay, and then we'll then we can go to the next screen. Perfect. And so why do we assess with maps? And I think Natalia is going to do this one.
I can go ahead and take over from there. Okay, so why do we assess with maps? I know Aurelie went into detail about a lot of the reason for mapping. So I'll just give you an example of for us and how we were able to use it a little bit for our programming. At the time of setting up the FMLFPP program in 2017, it indicated that Broward County, which as it shows here is 204 square miles, there were 500,000 people living in food deserts. That's low income and low access census tracts. And so these tracts also indicated that the average long-term diabetes rate was twice that of non-food deserts. So by using this map, we're able to see exactly where the people are. In this case, you see there are 84 schools, you see 61 clinics, you see 14 hospitals. So why are so many people still struggling with their health? It's because they're not all connected. So a part of the reason that we're using these maps is to make sure that we can find connections and linkages based on the assets that we have, and then we can build on those connections so that we can make progress in the areas that we serve. So the maps will help us to identify assets, to improve the quality of life in these communities, and it allows us to quickly do that in the spaces that we target. We can move on to the next slide. So we went into the reasoning for connecting the assets, and it's also to create support programs. We can make program decisions. We can mobilize and empower the community. We can start a local new program, and if we need information, it's readily available and it's easy to see, and it works for just about everyone who, especially of course, if you're not visually impaired. So for us, we were able to locate low income and low access communities to be able to then target where we would take our mobile markets. So we were able to reach out to the individuals in hospitals. We were able to reach out to senior feeding sites and to different schools to be able to make our programs more effective. So that's where we see the use of maps coming in. And so this is the food for thought. So you have pantries and school programs. So we want to go into our next steps. So what are the next steps? We are going to go into using our maps to actually do this. Our next steps involve, oh. I just lost it.
Sorry,
Aurelie, you're on mute.
did you want to read the question? Sorry, Natalia, I jumped off the screen.
That's what I realized. You probably wanted me to go ahead and read them directly so we can have that as for people to be able to mull over before we jump into the actual mapping.
Yep. Let me do
So
that.
if you could pull that back up. Okay, great. So what we wanted to be able to discuss as we're going through the mapping is to focus on areas that, in this case, for everyone who's on the call right now, that is important to you, that is unique in providing health support and services and/or food to your communities. I also want you to think about what are some of the barriers that the community faces in accessing these services. Some of the things that we covered in our previous discussion, the very last time we had a session, was that people saw that, like transportation was an issue. People saw that there wasn't enough focus in certain communities because of literally where they're located. So I wanted you to think about some of those barriers on your own, and then we can bring them up as we go in. And what are some of the areas that have potential for making food and health access connections in your community? Think of areas where there are existing and proposed land, institution, economic and social assets and or connections. It will allow us to save a lot of time. All right, so we're ready to dive in. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. Can everyone see my screen?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, great. I know there's some familiar voices on the call. I wanted to let you know I have triple protection for internet connection, so we should be fine this time. All right. So land and urban agricultural assets, it doesn't show it, but also retail is what we're going to be discussing. What you're seeing right now are what Anthony has already been able to input. So based on our previous discussions, based on the input from everyone who participated previously and anyone who hasn't physically been on the call but sent us information, the team at UHP has been able to get all of this information up. So what I have selected here are the layers. Seminole land, oh, and let me go back to the legend itself. So Seminole land you see is encircled with black lines. New health zones, this is what was done before in previous sessions. You'll see them in blue, with blue. You'll see the actual boundary for the South Broward Health Hub that was created. So that's the areas that we'll be concentrating on. And you'll also see what is the CDC Social Vulnerability Index for 2018. They have updated it, but we don't have all the data for that. So what I'd like to do is kind of explain a little bit about what that is. Social vulnerability refers to the potential negative effects on communities used by external stress, caused by external stresses on human health. Such stresses include natural or human-caused disaster or disease outbreaks. Reduced social vulnerability can decrease both human suffering and economic loss. So of course, if you look, you'll see that there are different colors that are represented. It shows, for example, the pinker sections are less than 0.8 to 1, and it gets lighter. There's an orange section that's 0.0 to 0.8. And what that really means is just that you're able to use the color guide to see what are the more distressed areas, the areas that need the most help. And by having that already highlighted, we're able to just go in and maybe concentrate more on those areas that seem to need the most help based on their vulnerability index. So what I'll do is I'll go into the layer list to show what's already selected. So you've already seen that Seminole land is selected, new health zones are selected, and also the boundary, of course, because we don't want to go straight too far because we can only bite off so much. And then we have the social vulnerability index. We wanted to be able to add some more locations to this, but I wanted to stop there and kind of ask you some of the areas that you think would be relevant to the topic of land, retail, and urban ag in this setting now that you see on the list that you think we should highlight.
I'm thinking right away, as you mentioned, retail, there's the SNAP retailers.
Yes, right at the top.
Yeah, and one thing I've noticed that's very interesting through our, and if you go to the legend, it actually shows what each color represents.
Yes.
But one of the things that I found interesting is that a lot of the areas of red, when you see a lot of red, based on the social vulnerability, you'll see less red boxes. And if you see red boxes, they tend to be Aldi's or smaller grocery stores. So that's something that's been just a highlight that I've identified through this exercise. That there's very few, like if you see super center oranges, there's like no oranges in the red areas almost at all, right? So there's no large grocery stores. And I think that's and then all the little dots that you see are probably just mom and pop shops, very small, and you'll see a more concentration. The reason why I bring those up is because a lot of our time we wanna talk about, and also another layer, Natalia, maybe the parcels available for urban agriculture.
Okay, available parcels.
Yeah, I think it's what's it called? Oh, right there. Oh, you already have it
No,
there. Never mind.
yeah, I
It's
just selected it. Literally just selected it based on what you just said.
oh, perfect.
Anyone else? Do you have any other ideas about some of the parcels we should select? We already kind of had a few that we wanted to share with you, if that's okay as well. So
Sometimes schools
all
are
right.
good.
So go ahead, Jamie.
The,
Schools, I couldn't hear you.
the schools, because they act as a really great um, meeting place and distribution.
Let me go into.
I also wanted to go, since we have our elders from the Seminole tribe too. I wanted to see if maybe we can focus on that area, because it's orange, and then it's
And
also
red.
and red. There's a
Right,
section that's red, and if you
exactly.
see, there's like very few things in that area, but maybe close by. I mean, even close by, the closest store is
I'll also pull in like community gardens and farmers markets because, of course, that's one of the
oh
focuses.
yes.
And we would pull in some community food pantries as well, and senior feeding sites. So we'll see what else is highlighted around them
There's
as
almost nothing.
resources. Almost nothing. You
Yeah.
just
I
said
just
it.
wanted to hop in there because I work closely with Together We Stand, and that looks like it's very close geographically to that
Yes,
area that we're
it
talking
is. Yes, it
That
is.
is the only really thing right there. And you
Yes.
work
Right.
with Xavier. What can you tell us more maybe about that location, or and also if our
And I
uncle,
can click on it so we can see if it needs to be updated. Let me get out of that. Go ahead.
Sure, it's it's a aquaponics community garden. So they are focusing on growing tilapia and educating the community on how to symbiotically grow plants and animals together, using the waste from one to be the fertilizer for the other. That's how I got involved with them, is my experience in aquariums for the last 15 years. And then that's where we do our compost. So I have a very close working relationship with John, who's the owner of the farm, John and Anna. And if there was something that we could come up with to set a proposal up for them, I would be happy to bring that to them, and I'm sure that he would be receptive to that.
well, I would
Oh,
like,
that's wonderful.
yeah.
It
And
is wonderful. They're great people.
do you have a phone number, or Natalia's trying to add email and phone number potentially? Xavier, if you could drop it in the chat, if you have it.
For the email for that, sure. Give me 1 second. I'll pull that up.
That would be
It's
awesome.
John at togetherwestand.org. And the phone number I will find for you in 1 second.
You said .org.
I do believe so.
And yeah, and I would like to hear. I don't know if Mimi or our elder. I didn't get the name. I apologize. If you have you heard of this organization? Are you familiar with it? Since it's so close to the Seminole land. Is there any experience you've had with them? Is it positive or negative? I mean, it can be. All right. Well, we'll reach out to them and see. I mean, Xavier, maybe we can link up and see what we can learn more about them. But also, I wanted to see too, in this area, we see the yellow. Can we go to the legend again, please, Natalia?
Absolutely.
Because there's some yellow spaces, and I think that's also available. Oh, is that an
Organic market. That might be Brothers, if I'm not mistaken. Is that Brothers?
Maybe
Jamie?
click on it and see what's there.
Let's see. City of Hollywood owns that parcel of land, is what it's set up as. Let's get
So it's
out
a
of
parks
that.
and recreation area.
And I don't believe that it's actually
Yes.
set up. I think
No,
they're
it's-
working on that up.
Okay.
It's good to see that it was identified, because then we can see that as a possible place for us to actually grow food. It might be a potential place for there to be a farmer's market that's set up, you know. And then we can also connect potentially Together We Stand. But let's zoom out a little bit more because I want to see if we can get some more on Seminole land. And if there's someone here who represents who can give us a little bit more information about it.
Yeah, I saw that little
connection.
parcel inside. You see that little green dot in the middle box?
Right here?
I wonder if that's something that is used by the Seminole to do something, because it's marked for some reason.
It just says vacant governmental.
Yeah, that's interesting because
that would be fantastic.
Well, I mean, just we need to figure out if that's something that that the Seminole are using for something. Like maybe on our end we just see it as vacant government, but it's in Seminole land, so it's Seminole land.
Did we want to change maybe the view on that? Maybe I can change the view. No, that's not how we change the view. Okay, let's.
Is anybody else thinking about other areas or particular things that we discussed in the questions, barriers, opportunities, ways in which we would like to connect, different sectors, land, retail, urban ag?
Yes, and being able to access food that you're familiar with. There's a convenience store here. Why does that not shock me? It's a lot of convenience stores, not necessarily the healthiest. Food is available in convenience stores.
When we're looking for land that could be used to grow edibles, would it be wise to reach out to some of the faith-based centers as well? Because a lot of times they have lots that are unused.
Yeah, and actually there is a layer of faith sites.
You want us to go in?
Yeah, because maybe there are, maybe let's turn off the urban agriculture parcel possibilities.
Okay.
Because they come up differently. Yeah, and then let's put the new partner faith sites and the contacted faith sites.
Okay.
Oh wow, there's a huge church right there by what church is that, Mimi? Do you know?
You see the color of the new partner faith sites? Where are we?
Click on it's one that we haven't contacted in green. Yeah, that one. Can you click on it? It's House of Prayer.
That is huge.
Mimi, are you all familiar or with that church? And is there anything that oh, Mimi left. Oh, sorry. Oh, I think this area is something interesting to look at though. Despite we lost our uncle.
And there's First Seminole Indian Baptist Church.
Okay, so it's a church it's a Seminole church. Okay. Well, no, the other one.
They're two different ones.
They're
yes.
two different churches.
Well, but that's an interesting thing. And I also know the Seminole are working on a project to grow indigenous seeds internally.
Yes.
So I know they already have a partnership with somewhere where they were going to grow the seeds. So they have a parcel that they're going to be using for 18 families. But is there a desire by that maybe for them to grow beyond that? Because and maybe I'm not familiar with that church right there, but it's a big chunk of land. So maybe there's some space there for potential growth in the future. I would say, Natalia, let's mark this zone too, because it is very
right around the churches.
Yeah, and there's well, I would mark the entire zone that's orange and capture, because if you can see, the only thing is Together We Stand, and there's no grocery stores like right around the Seminole. Oh, Mimi's joining again.
Oh, good. We missed her.
Yes. Hey, Mimi. We were wondering, but we were just kind of highlighting this section for the area surrounding Seminole land, well, which is all of this, but the particular delineation of it.
Yeah, I'm trying to figure out how much of it you wanted to, sorry.
And there's a church right there, and we were wondering if you all are familiar with that church, and if there's work that you do, or if there's things that the church is doing that maybe they would also be interested in collaborating. we noticed too that around the Seminole land, there's almost no grocery. There's actually no grocery stores around the area. So I wonder where people in the Seminole community go for groceries.
Yeah, a lot of it is like in Fort Lauderdale's Sunrise area. So it's usually like on an average like 1 hour drive and 1 hour drive back to nearby towns. And yeah, I'd say Clewiston and Immokalee, and I go to Fort Lauderdale a lot because there's more choices of stores. And yeah, uh,
And
And I
now
wasn't sure how much you wanted me to include, so I'm just
yeah,
going to.
that's good. Yeah, an hour out of your day to shop is not proper access.
yeah, that makes it 2 hours, of driving, just
Oh yeah.
driving alone. Yeah,
So
yeah.
so what are some of the things, like, because some of the things that we're talking about have been, like, we identify that some of the times Aldi's is interested in coming into areas where there's no grocery store. But maybe that's not a place where, like, for me personally, I like to shop at Aldi's for very specific things, but they don't have everything I need to cook for, like, Mexican food. So I know that sometimes that plays a role. But would that be something that, like, would be interesting to try to find ways to bring another like a grocery store that's closer? Because I
I'm
really,
coming up with a name. I'm not sure how I
oh,
want
and
to
for the
name it.
ID number, let's put 201 for the ID number 201. Yeah, perfect. Thank you. And yeah, Seminole, would it be okay to call this area Seminole Community Health Zone? So that
That was my next question. I don't want to just jump in and give a name. Someone give it.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, we can call it that. I actually live on Big Cypress Seminole Indian Reservation,
oh,
which
wow.
is like between Fort Lauderdale and Naples, 30
Yeah.
miles south of Lake Okeechobee. Yeah, yeah. Uh, yes, it's yeah, we've talked about grocery store for a long time. We have like a convenience store, so there's not much there. Uh, but it also kind of like really depends on the government and who's in the office and how are they going to use the money. And my major complaint is that the money does not stay and circulate in the community. All the money is going out, 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 millions and billions already. And I'm like, that's not common sense. We need grocery stores, necessary stores, services need to be there so the money starts growing there. And they seem to be too busy just enjoying spending money and not thinking about it. So that seems to be like the major problems, like the government system pushing it and backing it up or making plans.
Yeah. And I put in the chat a co-op grocery, because that's one of the ways that I've seen communities come together to build an internal revenue source that also feeds the community, right? And also holds a lot more
Yeah.
culturally appropriate foods. So Xavier and Nicole and I myself, we're kind of learning a little bit more about cooperative businesses. So it would be interested, if you all are interested, we could maybe collaborate in understanding what a Seminole cooperative grocery store could look like. And this could be a business revenue generator for the Seminole community, to feed the community, and also to help others understand the cultural foods of the Seminole, and come and purchase from there too, because it's an area where there's not a lot of grocery stores. So people that live around the Seminole community are also struggling potentially with accessing food. So that might be a good idea, if you think that. I don't know if you all
Yeah,
are.
that is a good idea. I also at one time, more than 10 years ago, a person from Fort Lauderdale was interested in going partnership in the grocery stores out there. I talked with my attorney, and my attorney said, no, it's not a good time. There's too much involved. You need more people involved in this, and there would be struggle. So I called back then, Now everybody's like actually organizing and becoming more involved in this idea of like growing gardenings. And if the tribe doesn't support them, if the government doesn't support them, everybody's willing to do it on their own, like at their homes. And me and Mimi will be supporting that. So yeah, I would like to stick with and listen to more of your ideas and support systems. I want to know more about it. We lost electricity here on the farm up in Virginia for about 45 minutes. We just got back on here, but it's very interesting what you're doing. I appreciate everything everyone's doing.
No, we appreciate you being here. I think this is all really important information, and I just wanted to bring attention to the time. We ran out of
Yes.
time, but we can. I'm open to spending a few more minutes if everybody is. Natalia, go ahead and let us know what you think.
Well, we're able to cover a little bit of what it is that we're actually doing in terms of our mapping. So what we just did was able to identify a vulnerable area, or able to identify some of the assets that are surrounding them. So it makes it easier for us to be able to pull these assets together because they're much closer. So we don't have to worry about distance as much as we would in another scenario. So if anyone has anything else to add here, then you can let us know now. I mean, we just talked about some of the barriers. I heard Mimi come up with or share them with us. And it does cover some of the things that we did talk about. It's good to know that if people are not, or, if outside forces aren't willing to help, then people are going to take it on themselves. I know that one of the things that came up was soil building, and that things weren't culturally appropriate. So I think when the community takes it in hand, it makes it much easier to be able to address those issues and then bring it collectively as we map out, where the issues are, to be able to get the support that we need. So I'm really glad that you've joined us for that reason, especially. And we can make some strides to move forward. So
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
you're welcome. Thank you.
And renewable, I just hop in. Renewable would be glad to help in whatever way, whether it be consulting or physically going and setting up systems to help build soil for you guys there as well. If that's a community-driven effort that we're trying to implement through the program, we would love to help you guys with that however we can.
Yeah, and just so you know, too, renewable is they do composting. Xavier is our composting guru right now, and basically they help rebuild soil and connect people that are saving waste and bringing he collects it and composts it and then bring back the new soil all replenished. So that would be a really good connection. I mentioned, like Aldo mentioned, they're working on growing also in the Seminole community and establishing more families that are going back to growing indigenous seeds. And so maybe there's an opportunity to maybe link some of that to the rebuilding of soil.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Great. It all starts with the soil.
It's so rich. It has all the nutrients and all the. I think of John Albee from the Urban Farming Institute every time I think of soil and how it's like a matrix of love for the plant.
Yeah, absolutely. It all starts with the soil and it ends with the soil. And in Florida, it can help prevent a lot of the pests that we get too by bringing in and actually creating our own indigenous soil rather than bringing in a lot of the waste from the other stuff. So yeah, something we could definitely dive into, look into.
Perfect.
It's always best when these connections are made. I think, Aurelie, we can get back to the slides.
Okay, I think,
Yeah.
did you all raise your hand?
I didn't see one. I'm sorry.
No, okay, all
Other
right.
questions? Okay.
Sure. All right, so I'm gonna go back to the slides as Natalia suggested. I think we already answered these, but Natalia, go ahead if you feel like we need to maybe discuss anything else.
Well, I mean, we could probably address some of the other things that had come up in previous sessions, which had to do with bureaucracy. This is some of what came up as some of the barriers to food distribution in the community.
And that
Does
would be
anyone
kind of
want to?
the second question, right? Like, how can we get the county and the municipalities and the government to
To
be more
address this?
supportive of this? Can I bring up the wish list idea?
Yes.
Okay.
I think that's a great idea.
Yeah,
I
in
think
the
that's
previous,
because it came
in
up
the
in a previous discussion. Yes.
yeah, I think it's brilliant, and I think that's something that we're gonna do. So as part of our collective output to the world, we want to come up with a wish list that we want from municipalities, the county, and the government. And we're basically gonna say we are a collective that is dedicated to feeding people and making sure that all people have food, especially those that need it the most. And for us to be able to do the work that we want to do, we need these things from you. And it could be cheap land, better policies, more support, maybe adding us onto the budget for some of the things. And when I say us, I include all of us, right? The collective us. But we can define as part of this process what that wish list looks like for us. And then that would be a way for us to advocate and leverage our efforts and advocate for change and getting municipalities that are already kind of working with us in some way to really put their money where their mouth is.
Yes.
What do you think about that?
I think that's fantastic.
I think
And
that's
I
great.
think, I mean, Jamie and I are beneficiaries right now of that wish list, because I know we've kind of said a little or maybe too much about the patch so far, but in its founding, it was founded through the Community Redevelopment Agency. And how did the patch come to be? Well, one person decided to say, well, we wanted to get a community garden. And there was a recognition that community gardens tend to start off really strong and then fail later on. And so the idea was, how can we make this more sustainable? How can we make it reach more of the community than just the space that it occupies? How else can we make this better? And so all the resources of talent and time from nonprofits, other governmental agencies were leveraged to come to the table along with the people who made the suggestion, who said, this is what we want. And they had hours and hours of discussion about how to create it, what it would look like. And so what was birthed was a market garden, which has the farmers market section, it has the farm itself, and it has the community garden. So those who wanted to grow could grow. That's the community garden section. They could get lessons, they could be taught. We have, we pull in people from University of Florida Institute of Food and Agricultural Sciences, that's UF-IFAS, to be able to have classes here so people could learn a little bit more about how to grow, what to grow, when to grow, what works for Florida. And you could grow whatever you wanted as long as it was pesticide free, and we were focused in on, getting organic produce. So that's how you can pull, get the government to pay attention. You have to go to the meetings, you have to say, this is what you want. But us coming together like this, collectively, with information, armed with the maps, and saying, this is where the issues are, this is where we've identified the problems, we can then have, something to show them, to say, this is where you can then fund these activities and these activities. And we have evidence of them working in these communities and those communities. So we should be able to make a case for what we're doing.
That's exactly right. And we do have interest from other cities in starting gardens and farms. It's honestly, there's
It's too many
people, and too many cities want assistance, and it's there's not enough people to actually help them put those make
Together.
action to do it together. So it's a push and pull back and forth quite often.
So again,
But-
any way we can find to support you in what you're doing, that's what we're here for.
That's what we're here to do. So
Yeah,
Can I just make a comment?
we can't hear who's on.
Yes.
Leanne Barber.
Oh, there you
Sure.
go, Leanne.
Hi.
I can
Can
hear
you
you
hear
now. A little bit better.
Sorry about that. I think I think that it's really, as you say, it's really important to have a single focus in terms of what our ask is, because I think if we're asking, there's 100 different ways you can solve a problem of access to food. You can say we really need to get an Aldi's here, or we need to start community gardens. And those are very, very different kinds of approaches to the problem. And one of them has a solution that includes job creation, economic development, healthy, living versus something that's more of a, it's a consumer kind of solution. So I think that if you're commissioned to come up with these types of solutions, it would be really useful to have a common, a common focus. And I think that, what the patch has done has been great. And what we need is capacity building. We need to have 200 people in Broward County that are capable of building and maintaining gardens. And I think that we've got your style of garden, which is the the grow bags, the more intensive. There's the food forest model, there's the in-ground model, there's all these different types of models. And frankly, I think that my kind of vision is that every available vacant land that's government owned has got a food forest on it. That could be a more of a passive environment where we could just be growing papayas and mangoes and things like that. So somehow we need to get more quantified in terms of the numbers of people that we want to train to have these skills, because we won't ever be able to scale when there's such a limited number of people that can do this. But if we could, if we had several hundred people that were farmers, that knew how to grow food, then we could have a broad outreach to people, and we could be, it's like the old victory gardens that that were implemented during World War II in the US and in Britain. It's absolutely doable, but we have to have the will, and we have to put our resources behind one or two models.
And going off of that, I think that's an absolutely wonderful idea and something that should be implemented. And vacant lots are important for sure, but there's also city managed agriculture everywhere. All of the palm trees, all of the grass for the cities is currently, being paid for to be landscaped and managed. So there's no reason we couldn't put more productive plants and species on the land that's already being paid for to be managed, and use that in a more productive way. That's always been my vision. Is Young Circle is a great example. It's a huge 10-acre piece of land that people go to. It is filled with homeless people that are struggling with food security, and it's all like oak trees and non-edibles that are managed twice a day. So there's other alternatives where you can already just repurpose the people that are already trained to do maybe a different type of collection.
Totally. Actually, the city of Boca Creek has looked at establishing one of their greenways as a food forest, and we're still exploring what that means. There are some policy barriers often as to why people can or cannot put food. I don't know if you know, but Florida had a grapefruit ban for a very long time. Which is crazy because we produce a lot of grapefruit, but those things have happened. There's been policies that ban people from municipalities from growing edibles, but there's some cities that are really interested in changing that. So definitely, Xavier, and I agree to just go back to Leanne's point and also to remind us of time. We need to wrap up. That wish list that I'm talking about right now is just the idea, but the goal is to come up with our wish list together and really be definite. Like, we need land, we need sponsorship for training master gardeners, and we need budget for maintaining some of these stuff or something like that. Like, we can define this as we go through this process, but these are really good, important points to make in that process. So thank you all for sharing.
Yes, I think everyone is at the best stage of it, where we're planning and we're talking about it and we're getting the ideas thrown around. This is the brainstorming session that gets everyone's ideas put on paper. And, as we move forward, it gets narrower and narrower, so that when we present a document to someone, they can see clearly what our vision is, clearly what our mission is. We'll have it lined up in objectives. We show milestones, when we're going to hit those milestones, and be able to show what the outcomes we expect to be. And it should be evident in our work once that happens, you know. And for us, the evidence is when some of the school children come back and say, you know, I actually started a garden right in front of my house, and my grandmother is eating, you know, the food from it. You know, that is the kind of thing where even the kids are now teaching the parents. And those are the things that are evidence of the impact that you're making. So we want to be able to do that. And it
Awesome.
starts here.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Natalia and Jamie, the Dania Beach Patch, for facilitating this activity and guiding us through the conversation. I just wanted to add to, like, there's 3 sessions today, right? 3 deep dives. We have identified kind of groups, right, that kind of go together well. The first one was the faith-based and charitable assets and solutions. And this is the land, retail, and urban ag. And then the next one is going to be the nutrition and health services and systems. So each one of our groups, and the way that we kind of, this is part of the infrastructure that we're building. I think that the wish list that this group produces is going to be a little bit different than the wish list that the nutrition and health systems produce. And then the wish list that the faith-based and charitable solutions builds, it's also going to look a little bit different. But maybe there's connections among the 3 that we can then say, like, this is what would support all of us, and then these are the things that could support the different areas of the infrastructure. So again, this is really great. I love that we are participated in this conversation. And now we're going to continue to put this information in a way that we can showcase it to you, back to you, at our next co-design meeting, so that we can go into, okay, now that we come up with these things that motivate us for change, where are our gaps? Like, from all of these conversations, what are the gaps that this group is highlighting? And then what are the action steps that we can take to solve them? So now to wrap up, we're gonna do our final poll. So please, thank you so much for bearing with us till the end, even though we went a little bit over. These conversations are so important. I really don't, and if people don't leave, then we stay. So I'm launching the poll now. If you could please, wait, no, let me launch the second poll. There you go. I'm gonna launch the second poll now. We're gonna take a minute to answer. Please, I think this one is a little shorter. I think it's only, it's 5 questions still. No, so not shorter, I lied. And then just please submit at the bottom. And if you could give me like a thumbs up or get yourself off mute and say done, because I'm not seeing anything on my side.
All right, all done. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, I'm gonna give another 15 seconds. All right, I'm gonna end the poll now. And I'm gonna share the results with you all because I'm not seeing anything. Can you see the results?
Yes, I can see the results.
Wonderful. All right, so I'm gonna stop sharing now so we can wrap up. Thank you all for participating in the poll. Now we want to open it up for partners. If you have anything that's coming up or anything that you would like to update us all on, please, this is the time. And if you don't feel like talking, you can also put it on the chat with the correct links and anything that we need. All right. Well, if you didn't have anything to share right now, please note that there is a partner event opportunity update on our website. And you can always go to that website and put the information into that form. We'll get it and we'll make sure that it goes into our next communication. So the next email, you can get the information that you shared with us. Please save the date for our next co-design meeting, which will be Thursday, June 3rd, from 11 to 1. We're gonna be switching over to after Memorial Day, just in case people are doing some things for that holiday. So just FYI. We will also be sending the recording and the recording and the slides for this meeting on our recap. And in that recap, if we get any events or updates from partners, we'll include those as well. Like, for example, in our previous meeting, St. Ruth Missionary Baptist Church shared that they will be having vaccination on site on May 11th. They will be sending us all the details and we can share those with you. But if anybody's interested in knowing more about this vaccination site, they'll be providing the Pfizer into administrations or like sets. I don't know how you say that. Deliveries, I guess. But yeah, if you want to know more, let me know and I will connect you to them. UHP is hiring community liaisons. So if anybody lives in South Broward, anywhere in South Broward, and is interested in being part of the building stronger connections with community members, please go to our website. We will send the details in the next communication. You should have received the information in the reminder that was sent out this morning. So if anybody would like to apply, please go ahead and let them know that this is the time to apply. Community liaisons are really the main connectors to community members. They work directly with community members and stakeholders to help us guide the efforts that we do together to make sure that they're always grounded in the communities that they live and that the voices of the communities that they are residents from are always a part of our planning. Any questions or concerns before we wrap up, or any last minute thoughts? All right, well then.
Great meeting, everyone. Continue to do what you've been doing.
Yes, thank you so much, everybody, and have a great day.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone. Talk to you guys soon.
Thank you for joining us.